The Nazca, blood, gods, and the lines drawn to the sky beneath the searing sun of the Peruvian desert. A forgotten civilization once carved their prayers into the earth so massive. They could only be seen from the sky. The Nazca people, isolated by sand and time, etched giant geoglyphs across tundra at square miles of arid land. Monkeys, hummingbirds, serpents, and spirals stretched longer than football fields, drawn with eerie precision into the dry crust of the desert. Yet they had no aircraft, no high cliffs, no vantage point from which to view their sacred art. The question that haunted generations: who are they drawing these for? Their world was ruled by extreme droughts that lasted years, sun that scorched crops to ash, and winds that carved ghosts into the dunes. In this hostile silence, the Nazca listened not for human voices, but for the breathing of gods. Their entire society revolved around divine communication, and when words failed, they turned to symbols giants drawn into the earth as offerings. These were not decorations. They were messages of desperation. To the Nazca, survival was a fragile agreement with invisible forces. The geoglyphs were sacred pathways, ritual roads walked by priests who carried cactus thorns, human skulls, and bowls of blood. Every line traced across the sand was a sentence, written in silence, pleading for order, fertility, and protection. To walk these lines barefoot under the desert sun was to step between worlds, to enter the realm of the divine. Yet behind this artistic genius lived a darker truth. The Nazca believed the gods were cruel, not forgiving, not patient. The slightest imbalance, a failed harvest, a sudden death meant something had angered them. And the punishment was swift: earthquakes, droughts, plagues without warning. Fear crept through every ritual. It wasn't about devotion, it was about survival. Their engineers mastered underground aqueducts, channeling rare water through stone tunnels that still flow today. But no science existed without superstition. Every drop of water, they believed, was granted not earned. Without constant appeasement, the gods would turn the desert against them. So they etched larger glyphs, spilled more blood, and performed ceremonies that blurred the line between religion and terror. To outsiders, these sand drawings are mysteries. To the Nazca, they were contracts, silent negotiations with sky beings who never showed their faces. The longer the drought, the more desperate the messages became. Rituals intensified. Beliefs grew darker, and when prayers written in stone were not enough, the Nazca began to offer something more. Because to a tribe trapped between burning earth and an indifferent sky, words etched into sand were only the beginning. What followed next would demand flesh, bone, and the severed heads of the unwilling. In Nazca society, power was not inherited by blood alone, it was earned through pain among the elite. Physical suffering was transformed into sacred devotion, and the body became a living canvas for the gods. Scarification was not punishment, but privilege. Only the chosen, those marked for spiritual leadership or divine favor, were permitted to endure it. Obsidian blades, sharp as glass and black as volcanic night, were passed through ceremonial flames before touching skin. The young stood still under the watchful gaze of elders as their flesh was cut with deliberate precision. No screams, no tears. Pain was sacred, and to dishonor it was to insult the gods themselves. The blades traced ancient symbols, sun spirals, sky pods, and sacred eyes across forearms, backs, and faces. Each cut whispered a message to the heavens. These marks were not meant to heal smoothly. They were designed to rise into thick, raised scars, permanent reminders of one's offering. Blood spilled from the chosen was seen as a bridge, connecting human will to divine power. The more intricate the scar, the greater the devotion. A plain body was a silent one, but a scarred body, that was a voice the gods could hear. Among the Nazca, pain was clarity. Elders believed that in moments of physical agony, The spirit could leave the body briefly and glimpse the will of the sky gods during scarification rites. Hallucinogenic herbs were sometimes administered not to numb the pain, but to enhance the visions that followed. Some initiates claimed to see winged beings flying over the geoglyphs. Others described hearing commands, warnings, or blessings through the wind. To be unmarked was to remain spiritually silent. To be scarred was to be seen. In council gatherings, those with the most sacred markings spoke first. Their wounds were their credentials. In death, their scarred skin was preserved, even worshipped as holy relics. But these rituals were not without risk. Infection, blood loss, and death were common. Still, no mother wept. No father intervened. To die during scarification was to be taken directly into the god realm, a fate more honorable than old-aged daughters. The Nazca grew more desperate for divine favor. The scars grew deeper, the symbols more violent. And in time, pain alone was no longer enough. The gods, they believed, had begun to thirst for something far more powerful than blood drawn from the willing among the Nazca. The human head was more than bone, and blood it was a vessel of power. Severed, preserved, and decorated, the skull was revered not as a threat, but as a sacred object. To possess a head was to hold a piece of divine energy, and for the Nazca, that energy was essential to survival. Burial pits filled with dozens of these so-called trophy heads have been unearthed across Nazca territory. The skulls often bear small, deliberate holes bored into the forehead or temple, threaded through with cords of woven hair or dyed cotton. Some were meant to be hung from belts, others swung from ceremonial staffs. These heads were not hidden in shame. They were paraded, honored, and worn like medals of faith. Many of the skulls belonged to outsiders, enemy warriors captured in battle, or trespassers who crossed into sacred land. But not all, some. Archaeologists believe came from within the tribe itself, volunteers, relatives, even children. In moments of extreme drought or spiritual crisis, the Nazca may have turned inward for sacrifice, because in their eyes, the gods responded only to what was most precious. Rain was rare in the Nazca desert. Fertility was unpredictable, and when crops failed, the people didn't look to the soul, they looked to the sky. Offerings were made in the only language the gods understood: death. During these rituals, heads were taken in open ceremonies, their owners sometimes drugged with hallucinogens, their expressions eerily peaceful. The heads were then cleaned, painted, and sometimes tattooed with sacred symbols before being displayed near the GOGLYPHS to the Nazca. The act of taking a head was not an act of cruelty. It was a form of spiritual stewardship. The skull was believed to retain the essence of the soul, and that essence could be used, channeled, invoked to influence nature. A well-preserved head was thought to bring blessings. A decayed one, curses. Some priests kept entire collections, each skull assigned a name, a purpose, a place in the ritual order. When invoking rain or harvest, they would whisper prayers through the drilled hole, sending words directly into the hollow chamber of the skull, hoping the voice would carry skyward. The more desperate the tribe became, the more heads were taken, not for war, not for punishment, but to maintain the fragile balance between the human and the divine. In the sands of the Nazca desert, skulls were not buried in shame. They were planted like seeds, offerings to gods who watched from above. But soon, even these sacred trophies would not be enough. The gods, it seemed, had grown silent, and silence demanded something louder, something spilling, something alive. In the blistering stillness of the Nazca desert, water was a rare miracle, and miracles demanded a price. The Nazca believed that only one offering could truly reach the gods: human blood, not spilled in violence, but drawn with intent, carefully, painfully, Reverently, priests and shamans turned to nature's cruelest tool, stingray spines, cactus needles, and sharpened thorns, delicate yet deadly instruments used to pierce their own flesh. These rituals of bloodletting were not hidden. They were performed openly on stone altars, before sacred gatherings, beneath a sky that refused to rain. Each drop was an offering, each wound a message sent upward. Bloodletting was more than a ritual, it was a contract. The Nazca believed the gods lived above the clouds and needed a reason to act. Crops withered, wells dried, and infants died of thirst. But the gods remained silent until pain cracked open the human body and released its crimson currency. Only then, they believed, would the heavens respond. The most devout bled from the tongue, the ears, the genitals areas believed, to hold deep spiritual power. Pain was not weakness, it was clarity. As blood poured, visions came, flashes of winged deities, roaring animals, and messages from beyond the sky, under the influence of hallucinogens. These visions blurred the lines between sacrifice and revelation, and when the bleeding stopped, the body became sacred, an altar in motion. Some shamans performed these acts while walking the Nazca Lines, those massive geoglyphs carved into the earth, believed to be ritual pathways. As they moved, bleeding and chanting, they left traces of blood in the sand, a trail for the gods to follow. The larger the glyph, the greater the sacrifice required during times of extreme drought. Entire communities watched as their priests climbed high into the desert hills to offer their blood to the wind. They stood there, arms raised, bleeding into the air, hoping the gods would smell the iron and grant rain. But when the skies stayed dry and the rivers cracked into dust, it became clear to the Nazca that blood alone might no longer be enough. If the gods had once listened to pain, now they demanded something more complete, something final. The time for symbolic sacrifice was ending. The time for death was near. Deep in the parched Nazca valleys, the search for divine answers led not only to blood but to altered states of the mind. Shamans, revered and feared, consumed powerful hallucinogens derived from the San Pedro cactus, a sacred plant packed with mescaline. The rituals were not gentle, the visions were not peaceful. To the Nazca, communion with the gods required suffering inside, the body and beyond it. The cactus brew was thick, bitter, and laced with pain. Within minutes, the body responded violently, waves of nausea, shaking, retching, even temporary paralysis. But this was not failure. This was the passage, the purge of the human vessel to make space for spirits to speak. The more the body trembled, the more sacred the trance. Some lay motionless for hours, eyes rolled back, skin marked with sacred symbols, drawn in ash and blood. In this raw and broken state, the Nazca shamans claimed to hear voices, whispers from the sky gods, from ancestors, from forces beyond the stars. These visions brought not comfort, but commands: when to plant, when to sacrifice, when to fear. The gods did not ask. They instructed, and their words, channeled through writhing bodies, shaped the fate of entire villages. Drawings found on Nazca pottery depict wide-eyed figures vomiting streams of dots and snakes, visual echoes of these intense spiritual journeys. To an outsider, it may seem like madness, but to the Nazca, this was revelation, truth delivered through torment. The shamans became the tribe's divine messengers. Their visions predicted floods or droughts with chilling accuracy. They pointed out those marked for death, named the guilty, and chose the next offerings for the gods. A single whispered prophecy from a cactus-fueled trance could send an entire village into mourning. All sacrifice stopped, and as the rituals grew more intense, so did the visions. Some spoke of shadows walking across the geoglyphs. Others described gods with burning eyes and hands that bled rivers. These were not hallucinations to the Nazca. These were warnings, and when warnings came too late, only one final act could restore balance to the broken contract with the sky. When the rains failed and the wind howled with the fury of forgotten gods, the Nazca turned to their most sacred ritual, the sacrifice of life itself. Death was not punishment. It was offering, and in the heart of the storm, when crops blackened and rivers vanished, it was the purest among them who were sent to meet the divine. Sacrifice was not reserved for captured enemies. Often, it was the noble-born, the beautiful, the young, the unblemished, chosen by their own families to ascend through death. To be sacrificed was to become a bridge between the human world and the gods above, and that bridge had to be flawless. Some were buried alive beneath desert stones, their mouths filled with maize and prayers. Others were beheaded beside the grate. Geoglyphs, those colossal lines etched into the sand like open veins, blood spilled across sacred shapes, feeding symbols that stretched for miles across the earth. The desert became a canvas of death, each drop of blood a stroke of divine negotiation. These ceremonies were not silent. They were filled with chants, drums, and smoke. Priests painted the victims in ochre and ash, whispering last blessings before the final act. The wind carried the cries upward. The people believed the gods were listening. Volunteers stepped forward in times of desperation, not out of madness but belief. To be chosen was to serve not just the tribe, but the balance of the world. Some believed their spirits would rise into the clouds, become rain, and fall again as life-giving water. But even sacrifice could not guarantee mercy. Sometimes the sky remained dry. Sometimes the gods remained silent as the sandstorms returned, and the earth cracked wider beneath their feet. The Nazca dug deeper into pain, deeper into faith. They had given blood. They had given bone. And now, they had given their best. All that remained was dust, and the question echoing across the desert. Blood, ash, and silence. The extreme beliefs of the Ndembu Tribe in the thick, emerald forests of northwestern Zambia, where the earth smells of rain and ash. The Ndembu people once lived under the invisible rule of spirits, forces that demanded blood not in violence, but in offering. Pain was not punishment here. It was permission, a sacred passageway. And the body, carved or marked, was merely the parchment on which spiritual messages were written. To the Ndembu, every birth, illness, drought, or death was never random. It was the ripple of something unseen. Spirits of ancestors hovered in the silence of trees, watching, judging. When harmony broke, when a woman could not conceive, when crops failed without warning, the blame did not fall on nature. It fell on the imbalance between the living and the dead, and blood, warm and deliberate, was the breach. Rituals were not symbolic, they were physical. A sick man might be led before the elders and cut with ritual blades. His blood dripped onto sacred bark or clay, whispered over by healers who believed the spirits needed to taste suffering before they would listen. For the Ndembu, healing could not begin until pain had spoken. Even children were not spared. Small incisions on the body, made during ceremonies, were believed to invite spiritual guidance. These marks were not just scars, they were living scripts, reminders that the child now belonged not just to the family, but to a sacred chain of ancestors. In a world shaped by spirit justice, the physical body became a tool for a spiritual negotiation. There were no temples here, only the forest, the flame, and the blood. And in that mix, the Ndembu found meaning. A man who cried out during a ritual was not weak. He was purging impurity. A woman who bled during a fertility rite was not shamed, she was sanctified. Their rituals often confused outsiders, but within the tribe, each act of pain had purpose. What might seem disturbing to others was, to them, a way of survival, a way to make the invisible visible. To keep the balance between the dead and the living intact, in every drop of blood, there was a plea, in every wound, a prayer. And among the most intense of these ceremonies came when a boy stopped being a boy when silence, ash, and blood came together to erase his past and forge a man from bone and spirit. In the Ndembu world, a boy was not born a man, he had to be broken into one. The journey began with a cry, not of weakness, but of release. As the forest swallowed him in its ancient hush, the boy stepped away from his mother's gaze and into the hands of masked elders. Childhood ended not with age, but with ritual. He was taken to a secluded clearing, hidden deep within the trees, where no woman could follow. For days, even weeks, the boy lived apart, cloaked in ash and silence. Food was sparse. Voices were hushed. His name was no longer spoken. The tribe believed the soul must be emptied before it could be reshaped, before the boy could receive the weight of manhood. The centerpiece of the ritual was cutting. Not random or cruel, but precise, intentional, tiny incisions carved into the skin with sharpened blades, often along the chest or arms. Each cut symbolized a lesson: courage, obedience, the surrender of self. The blood that followed was seen not as loss, but as opening. Through that pain, the spirits of male ancestors were believed to whisper strength into his bones. Pain was not hidden. It was necessary. To endure without crying was considered dishonor. The first cry was sacred, a signal that the boy had crossed a threshold, shedding his softer spirit and allowing the ancestral force to enter. Elders watched for it, listened for it, marked it as a sign that the ritual had begun its true work. In this raw space, the boy learned not just to survive, but to suffer with meaning. He memorized stories of warrior ancestors, reenacted sacred battles with ash-smeared hands, and moved through physical trials that forced body and spirit into union. When he finally emerged, he was not simply welcomed, he was renamed, reborn. Among the Ndembu, manhood was never passive. It was earned in blood, ash, and silence. The forest kept its secrets, but the scars told their own truth, and just as manhood was forged through suffering, so too was mourning. For when the Ndembu mourned the dead, they did not merely cry, they performed death itself. At the heart of the Ndembu's world stood the Mukula tree, telling, ancient and silent witness to the passage between life and death. This tree was more than wood and leaf. It was a sacred sentinel where the boundary between the living and the dead grew thin, and spirits whispered their final secrets. When a villager died, mourning was no ordinary grief. It became a ritual charged with fear and reverence. The body was gently covered in ashes, a ghostly veil that marked the soul's transition. Ash symbolized both death and purification, binding the spirit to the earth while cleansing the living from spiritual contact. Minish and around the Mukula, the community, gathered in silence so deep it seemed to press on the skin. Speech was forbidden. Even a single word risked disturbing the fragile balance between worlds. The dead, it was believed, lingered in a shadowed form, neither fully present nor gone. These spirits could bless the village with protection or curse it with sickness and misfortune, depending on how the living honored them. Mourning ceremonies included symbolic reenactments of death. Elders moved slowly, repeating gestures that imitated the dying breath and the closing of eyes. These acts were not mere performance, but a sacred dialogue with the unseen. Every movement was a plea for peace, a way to calm restless souls before they slipped completely beyond reach. Afterward came the cleansing, the washing away of ashes and sorrow. This was essential. Without it, spiritual chaos might erupt, bringing curses or sickness to the village. The Mukula tree stood as guardian through all this, silent, eternal, watching over both the living and those caught between worlds. Daughters the Ndembu honor death beneath this towering sentinel. The cycle of life and ritual pain continued, leading toward the next right one of purification and rebirth, especially for women marked by fire. Within the Ndembu Tribe, a woman's body was seen as a vessel of both life and potent spiritual force, a force that demanded careful control. When a woman entered menstruation or suffered a miscarriage, she was believed to become spiritually open, vulnerable to unseen forces that could spill into the village and disrupt its delicate balance. This vulnerability was not merely personal. It was a threat to the entire community. To guard against this danger, women underwent harsh purification rites designed to seal these invisible gateways. Central to these rites were fire and scarring, brutal acts that transformed vulnerability into sacred protection. Symbolic burns were carefully placed on the skin, not to punish, but to mark a woman as purified and restored. Each scar was a sign that the woman had survived spiritual testing, her body now closed against contamination. These fire rituals were often accompanied by days of seclusion in small huts away from the village. The isolation was as much a spiritual quarantine as a physical one, meant to contain any harmful forces before the woman could safely return. During this time, she was bathed in intense herbal concoction smoke and bitter waters believed to cleanse the soul as well as the flesh. The process was painful, both physically and emotionally. Yet, within the Ndembu worldview, pain was necessary. It was the price of harmony. Only through suffering could the invisible forces be pacified and the woman's spirit sealed. Without this cleansing, misfortune was thought to ripple through. The village crops would fail, children would fall ill, and the dead might stir in unrest. This ritual fire was not a punishment, but a transformation, turning danger into protection, fear into sacred strength. In the cracks and scars left behind, the Ndembu saw proof of resilience, a testament that the spirit, though opened, could be carefully closed again. After this painful purification, the woman rejoined her community, restored and powerful, carrying the marks of fire's badges of survival and spiritual renewal. And as the village breathed easier, attention turned to the mysteries of illness, where unseen enemies might strike the soul surely as the body. For the Ndembu, sickness was never simply a matter of the body. It was a shadow cast by deeper forces, moral failings, broken relationships, and spiritual warfare. When illness struck without clear cause, it was believed that a hidden enemy had unleashed a secret curse. This unseen attacker, often close to the victim, used ritual magic to poison not just flesh but the very soul. The arrival of the Ngonga, the tribe's spiritual healer, was both feared and necessary. These figures stood at the crossroads of the physical and spiritual worlds, armed with knowledge of the invisible. Their diagnosis ceremonies were dark and intense, far from simple herbal remedies. They involved animal sacrifice, loud chants, and trance-like possession, where the Ngonga called upon ancestral spirits to reveal the source of the attack. In these terrifying rites, the Ngonga might shake violently, speak in voices not their own, or embody spirits demanding justice. Their actions were meant to shake secrets loose from the air, forcing hidden truths into the open. It was not unusual for suspicions to fall upon someone, close family members, jealous rivals, or disgruntled neighbors. The accusation itself carried immense weight, threatening to tear families apart. The victim's illness became a mirror reflecting social tensions and spiritual debts. Healing was not simply about curing the body, but about restoring harmony within the community. Punishing the offender was essential, whether through confession, ritual, cleansing, or exile, because the poison of hatred or envy had to be expelled before recovery could begin. This complex web of belief made illness a source of fear beyond pain. The sick person was vulnerable not only to death, but to spiritual ruin. The Ngonga's ceremony blurred the line between healing and punishment. reinforcing that sickness could kill the soul as surely as it could kill the body. As the community navigated this fragile balance, punishment was never far behind, carried out not with chains or prisons, but with ritual justice meant to cleanse and terrify alike. In the Ndembu Tribe, justice was a force of fear and spirit. No iron bars or locked cells were needed to enforce the law. Punishment took forms that left marks deeper than wounds, marks etched into the mind, body, and soul. The tribe's system was designed to break the offender's will, restore balance, and warn others of the cost of transgression. Public shaming was common and brutal. Offenders were exposed before the entire community, stripped of dignity while neighbors whispered and pointed. Isolation followed, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, cut off from the warmth of kin and the comfort of rituals. This social exile was a slow poison, severing the offender from the web of connection that sustained life. Physical punishment was symbolic, but no less terrifying. Scars carved into the skin, sometimes with ritual blades, acted as permanent reminders of wrongdoing. These marks were not just punishment, they were warnings, badges worn as both shame and penance. Yet the most dreaded sentence was the ritual curse. Elders gathered in solemn circles, calling upon ancestors with chants that filled the night air. These invocations were believed to summon powerful spirits capable of unleashing misfortune, sickness, and death on the guilty. The curse was invisible but deadly, its weight crushing the heart of the offender. Some were said to wither away, not from wounds, but from the unbearable terror of spiritual guilt. Confession was the only release, an act that could lift the curse and restore peace. The fear of this unseen judgment kept many in line, a constant reminder that the tribe's power lay not in chains, but in ancestral wrath. As scars and silence settled on the punished, the Ndembu's cycle of ritual suffering continued, each act woven into the fabric of their belief, where pain was both punishment and purification, leading finally toward a transformation of spirit. And in this cycle, the sacred pain of initiation awaited the forging of manhood through ash and blood, though time has softened many of the Ndembu's harshest rituals. Their echoes still pulse through the tribe's memory. Elders gather beneath the same ancient trees, recounting tales of spirits who punish those who stray from purity, and rituals that once shaped flesh and soul alike. These stories are not just history, they are warnings, reminders of a world where belief carved the boundaries of life and death. The scars of the past remain, not only on bodies but in the tribe's collective spirit. Pain was never meaningless. It was a language spoken between the living and the unseen. Each cut, each trial, each sacrifice was a thread woven into the fabric of identity, where suffering became strength and fear transformed into sacred law. In the Ndembu's world, the invisible held power over the visible. Their rituals reveal how deeply belief can shape human behavior, bending bodies and minds to the will of ancestral spirits. It is a testament to how cultures use pain to maintain order, to protect, and to endure, though many ceremonies have faded. The living memory of sacred pain persists, a haunting reminder that what once was feared and endured still lingers, shaping the tribe's sense of self and their fragile connection to the spirit world. From the ashes of ancient rites rises the enduring truth that human pain can become purpose, and fear can be the foundation of faith. This journey through the Ndembu's sacred suffering opens the door to understanding the complex rituals of healing and transformation that continue to define human existence. Neanderthal clans, dark secrets of ancient rituals and survival in the endless cold of Ice Age Europe. Neanderthal clans carved out a fragile existence against a brutal, frozen world. They were not mere beasts struggling to survive, but a people bound by unspoken rules, fierce loyalty, and strange customs that echo deep within the human story. The harsh landscape demanded more than strength, it demanded a will to endure, to protect, and to understand forces beyond sight. These clans lived in caves or simple shelters, their days filled with the hunt-chasing mammoths, reindeer, and bison with stone tools crafted through skill and experience. But beneath the surface of this survival lay a world far stranger than bones and spears suggest. Archaeological discoveries reveal that Neanderthals practiced rituals, some simple, others chilling, hinting at a spiritual life complex and unsettling. Graves have been found, carefully dug and covered with ochre-red pigment that stained bones and soil alike. This simple act of burial suggests a belief in an afterlife or respect for the dead. A shocking revelation for a species once thought to be purely animal. Yet, these burials often show signs of violence. Broken bones ranged deliberately, skulls marked with cuts, and signs that bodies were sometimes dismembered after death. Violent rites may have served as a grim reminder of the harsh world they faced, or perhaps as a spiritual protection against restless spirits. The possibility of cannibalism, not just as food but tied to ritual, haunts these ancient remains. Such acts speak to a culture where the boundaries between life, death, and the supernatural blurred in the face of survival. Social structures were rigid, built on kinship and strength, yet also on fear and respect. The clans needed order, and rituals helped enforce it, sometimes through terrifying punishments or displays of dominance that bonded the group as tightly as blood. Every scar, every fractured bone, every pigment mark carried meaning far beyond what modern minds can easily grasp. This glimpse into the shadowed ancestors revealed the people wrestling not only with the cold but with ideas of justice, death, and belonging. Their world was savage and beautiful, brutal yet deeply human, laying the foundation for rituals that would echo through time within the unforgiving world of Neanderthal clans. Survival demanded more than strength. It required strict order, enforced by harsh discipline. Evidence from ancient bones tells a chilling story of punishment so severe it left permanent marks etched in bone and flesh. These were not mere accidents of a violent life. They were deliberate acts meant to control, to warn, to maintain fragile peace within the tribe. Archaeologists have uncovered skeletons bearing clear signs of broken bones, not just healed injuries from hunts or fights, but fractures inflicted with purpose. Some limbs were shattered and allowed to heal improperly, suggesting punishment designed to cripple without killing. These broken bodies tell of a justice system brutal and uncompromising, where physical pain was wielded as a tool of social control. The term bone breaker seems fitting for those who enforced such law, a role that blended brutality with necessity. In a world where every member's survival affected the whole clan, disobedience or weakness could threaten the group's existence. Punishments were harsh to deter behavior that endangered the tribe. From theft of resources to failure in the hunt, some experts believe ritualized violence may have played a role, where inflicting pain was part of a ceremony to cleanse guilt or restore balance. These rites, terrifying to modern eyes, likely reinforced loyalty and obedience. Pain was both punishment and a grim reminder of the laws that governed their savage world. The broken bones also reveal an emotional landscape: fear, resentment, but also acceptance of harsh realities. The tribes understood that survival was a delicate balance of cooperation and dominance. The brutal punishments kept chaos at bay, but at a great human cost. This violent code shaped the lives and deaths of Neanderthals, weaving cruelty into the fabric of their culture. Death among Neanderthal clans was more than intended. It was a passage shrouded in mystery, marked by rituals both haunting and profound. Burials, though rare, show deliberate care. Bodies laid carefully in shallow graves, often sprinkled with red ochre. This crimson pigment stained bones and earth alike, a vivid symbol of blood, life, and perhaps rebirth, a presence so simple tools and animal bones beside the dead hints at offerings meant to accompany them into another world. These burial practices reveal a startling depth of spiritual awareness. Neanderthals seemed to grasp that death was not final but part of a larger cycle, one that demanded respect, ceremony, and possibly even fear. The ochre, a powerful pigment across ancient cultures, may have symbolized protection or a bridge between the living and the dead. Such rituals suggest that beneath their rugged, survival-driven existence lay a complex inner life rich with belief. Yet, alongside these reverent acts, darker practices emerge. Evidence points to cannibalism not only for survival but entwined with ritual. Some Neanderthal bones bear marks of butchery, cut marks and fractures suggesting flesh was removed with care and intent. His unsettling behavior may have been part of ceremonies aimed at absorbing the strength or spirit of the deceased, or at warding off evil forces. It challenges the modern mind to see these acts not simply as cruelty, but as deeply symbolic gestures tied to death and rebirth. This duality respect mingled with violence paints a vivid picture of Neanderthal spirituality. Death was feared, honored, and transformed into ritual, revealing a cultural world far more intricate than once imagined. The clan's relationship with mortality shaped not only their ceremonies, but their very identity, binding the living and the dead in a fragile dance through fire and blood. These ancient people sought meaning in the face of oblivion, forging rituals that were as chilling as they were sacred. From these shadowed rites rises a new understanding of Neanderthal belief, one that extends beyond survival into the realms of the spirit. Neanderthal clans bore their stories not only in memory but on their very bodies, using marks that spoke of identity, status, and unseen powers. Archaeological discoveries reveal teeth scratches etched into bones and shells stained with pigments, early signs of tattoos and scarification long before the race. Of modern civilization, these markings were more than decoration. They carried weight, signaling belonging to a clan, a warrior's rank, or spiritual protection against the dangers lurking in a harsh world. The teeth marks carved deep grooves, deliberate and precise, hinting at rituals that transform the body into a living canvas. Such scars may have symbolized rites of passage, bravery in the hunt, or survival through pain. The physical act of marking oneself was a powerful statement and external proof of inner strength and loyalty to the tribe. Pigments, often ochre, coated shells and bones, suggesting early body painting or adornment. These colors were not random, but chosen for their spiritual significance, believed to guard against illness or evil spirits. The bright reds and yellows stood out against the grey landscape of Ice Age Europe, turning individuals into living symbols of their clan's power and beliefs. These extreme cultural expressions reveal how Neanderthals coped with relentless hardship. Beyond the fight for food and shelter, they battled psychological struggles, fear, isolation, and the looming threat of death. Marking the body became a form of control, a way to channel pain into meaning and transform vulnerability into strength. Through these marks, the clans created a language of survival written in flesh and pigment. Each line and color told a story of resilience, identity, and connection to a world both physical and spiritual. Beneath the visible rituals of the Neanderthal clans lay a shadowy world ruled by silence, secrecy, and unspoken laws. These ancient people lived by taboos so strict that breaking them could mean exile or worse. Archaeological clues hint at hidden ceremonies conducted away from prying eyes, where silence itself became a powerful tool to bind or punish the tribe. The act of silence, rare in a world demanding constant communication, may have served as a form of ritual control. In some ceremonies, not speaking could symbolize respect for the dead, appeasement of spirits, or a way to focus the mind during moments of great danger. This silent language was a sacred code, a boundary that separated the clan's inner circle from outsiders and kept dangerous knowledge hidden. Social exclusion was another harsh punishment. To be cast out from the group meant facing the brutal wilderness alone, a sentence often worse than death. Secret rituals may have governed this process, isolating those who broke taboos or threatened the delicate balance of clan life. This enforced silence and exclusion reinforced unity among those who remained, strengthening their survival chances in a world where every weakness endangered all. These hidden customs reveal a complex society where laws were not written but lived. In fear and respect, the boundaries of behavior were enforced not only through pain and punishment, but also through psychological control and communal pressure. The tribe's survival depended on obedience to these invisible rules that shaped identity, loyalty, and belonging far beyond simple survival instincts. This silent language of taboos and secret ceremonies kept the clan's darkest fears and deepest strengths locked away. It was a culture where what was not said carried as much weight as spoken words, and where survival meant navigating a web of unseen dangers. Within the tribe itself, the dark rituals of Neanderthal clans cast long shadows that reach into the heart of modern humanity. These ancient customs marked by violence, silence, and deep spirituality challenge contemporary ideas about what it means to be civilized. They force a reckoning with uncomfortable truths, that the roots of culture are tangled with pain, fear, and survival instincts as old as time itself, far from simple savages. Neanderthals displayed a complex web of beliefs and practices that reveal the primal struggle to find meaning in a world ruled by death and uncertainty. Their rituals, brutal and sacred, were attempts to impose order on chaos, to protect the tribe, and to make sense of life's harshest realities. These acts of violence, body markings, and secret ceremonies were expressions of identity, loyalty, and the human need to belong. Modern society often separates morality from survival, but the Neanderthal way blurs those lines. Their justice was ruthless, yet necessary for group cohesion. Their spiritual rites mixed reverence with fear, reflecting an ancient human quest to understand death and the unknown. These rituals remind humanity that culture itself began as a response to suffering and the instinct to endure. In understanding Neanderthal customs, modern humans confront the fragile boundary between nature and civilization, chaos and order. The echoes of these rituals persist today in traditions, beliefs, and the way societies enforce rules and express identity. They reveal that beneath the surface of modern life lies a shared ancestral struggle shaped by ancient rites both disturbing and profound. The story of Neanderthal clans is not just a tale of the distant past, it is a mirror reflecting primal forces that continue to shape human nature. From these shadowed ancestors, the foundations of culture, justice, and belief were laid, enduring through millennia to define what it means to be human. Must survive alone in the wilderness for days or even weeks. This harsh trial strips away comfort and forces reliance on one another amid the unforgiving cold. It is a rite that proves their strength, trust, and ability to face hardship together. Vital lesson in a land where weakness can mean death. The final ceremonies are rich with symbolism, invoking the spirits of the land and ancestors to bless the union. Couples exchange vows not only to each other but to the community and nature that sustains them. These promises create bonds that extend beyond personal love, connecting them to the cycle of life and survival that defines the Nenet way. Marriage, in this frozen world, is a powerful testament to endurance, loyalty, and unity. It binds individuals into a living network of relationships essential to facing the relentless Arctic cold, a web of frozen bonds that defy time itself. As these deep connections form, the tribes struggle to preserve their identity against encroaching modernity becomes ever more urgent. The Nenet's ancient rituals, carved by centuries of struggle against the Arctic's brutal embrace, now face a new kind of threat: modernity. As roads inch closer to the tundra and technology spreads into once isolated regions, the tribe's darkest and most sacred customs risk slipping away, swallowed by the relentless tide of change. What once thrived in silence and shadow now teeters on the edge of extinction. Younger generations, drawn by schools, cities, and new opportunities, begin to question the harshness of traditions that shaped their ancestors, the brutal sacrifices, the severe punishments, the intense shamanic ceremonies. Many see these practices as relics of a distant past, incompatible with modern values. Yet for elders, these rituals are the lifeblood of identity, the invisible threads that bind the tribe to their land, their spirits, and each other. This clash creates tension within the community, a fragile struggle to keep the soul of the Nenet alive without suffocating it under the weight of progress. Some ceremonies have already softened or disappeared, replaced by simplified versions or abandoned altogether. Others continue in secret, guarded fiercely from outsiders and even from the younger tribe members who may reject them. The shadows of these rituals still stretch long, echoing with the fear that one day they might vanish completely. Outside influences bring benefits: medicine, education, connection, but also erosion. The delicate balance between survival and tradition becomes a tightrope walk. Preserving the tribe's darkest customs means confronting painful truths and embracing discomfort, even when it challenges modern sensibilities. But to lose them risks losing the very essence of what it means to be Nenet. This battle between past and future unfolds beneath the endless Arctic sky. Where the cold never relents, the Nenet stand at a crossroads, caught between the ancient rhythms of blood and spirit, and the distant promise of a different life. Their story is one of resilience and loss, a frozen legacy fighting to endure in a world that refuses to stay still. As these ancient customs hang in the balance, the tribe's sacred bond with the reindeer, the heart of their identity, remains a powerful reminder. Of all they risk losing, must survive alone in the wilderness for days or even weeks. This harsh trial strips away comfort and forces reliance on one another amid the unforgiving cold. It is a right that proves their strength, trust, and ability to face hardship together. Vital lesson in a land where weakness can mean death. The final ceremonies are rich with symbolism, invoking the spirits of the land and ancestors to bless the union. Couples exchange vows not only to each other but to the community and nature that sustains them. These promises create bonds that extend beyond personal love, connecting them to the cycle of life and survival that defines the Nenet way. Marriage, in this frozen world, is a powerful testament to endurance, loyalty, and unity. It binds individuals into a living network of relationships essential to facing the relentless Arctic cold, a web of frozen bonds that defy time itself. As these deep connections form, the tribes struggle to preserve their identity against encroaching modernity becomes ever more urgent. The Nenet's ancient rituals, carved by centuries of struggle against the Arctic's brutal embrace, now face a new kind of threat: modernity. As roads inch closer to the tundra and technology spreads into once isolated regions, the tribe's darkest and most sacred customs risk slipping away, swallowed by the relentless tide of change. What once thrived in silence and shadow now teeters on the edge of extinction. Younger generations, drawn by schools, cities, and new opportunities, begin to question the harshness of traditions that shaped their ancestors, the brutal sacrifices, the severe punishments, the intense shamanic ceremonies. Many see these practices as relics of a distant past, incompatible with modern values. Yet for elders, these rituals are the lifeblood of identity, the invisible threads that bind the tribe to their land, their spirits, and each other. This clash creates tension within the community, a fragile struggle to keep the soul of the Nenet alive without suffocating it under the weight of progress. Some ceremonies have already softened or disappeared, replaced by simplified versions or abandoned altogether. Others continue in secret, guarded fiercely from outsiders and even from the younger tribe members who may reject them. The shadows of these rituals still stretch long, echoing with the fear that one day they might vanish completely. Outside influences bring benefits: medicine, education, connection, but also erosion. The delicate balance between survival and tradition becomes a tightrope walk. Preserving the tribe's darkest customs means confronting painful truths and embracing discomfort, even when it challenges modern sensibilities. But to lose them risks losing the very essence of what it means to be Nenet. This battle between past and future unfolds beneath the endless Arctic sky. Where the cold never relents, the Nenets stand at a crossroads, caught between the ancient rhythms of blood and spirit and the distant promise of a different life. Their story is one of resilience and loss, a frozen legacy fighting to enjoy in a world that refuses to stay still. As these ancient customs hang in the balance. The tribe's sacred bond with the reindeer, the heart of their identity, remains a powerful reminder of all they risk losing. Ndembu Tribe, the forgotten hunters and their dark rituals of survival deep within the dense, unbroken canopy of the Colombian Amazon. The Ndembu Tribe lives as they have for centuries, hidden from the world, elusive as the shadows between the trees. They are one of the last true nomadic peoples, moving silently across a vast wilderness that has become both their home and fortress in this untouched corner of the earth. The Ndembu survive entirely off the forest, relying on skills passed down through countless generations. But their way of life is fragile, teetering on the edge of extinction as forces from outside encroach relentlessly. The Ndembu's existence is a mystery to most, a world shaped by the rhythms of the jungle, where every leaf, river, and animal carries meaning. Their days begin before dawn, with the cool mist wrapping round them like a cloak. They hunt with bows and arrows, gather roots and fruits, and fish in rivers so clear that the smallest movement ripples like a secret. Yet beneath this natural harmony lies a set of ancient customs that can shock the untrained eye, rituals and beliefs woven tightly with survival, pain, and spirit. Nature is not just a backdrop. It is a living, breathing force that guides the Ndembu's every step. Their rituals connect them deeply to the forest's power, demanding respect and sometimes terrifying sacrifice. They believe that the spirits of animals and trees watch over them, punishing those who disrespect the land. This belief drives rituals that can appear extreme: self-inflicted wounds during ceremonies, or rites of passage marked by pain and endurance. These customs serve a purpose beyond the physical. They bind the community together, protect the tribe from unseen dangers, and maintain balance with the jungle's unforgiving forces. For the Ndembu, the line between the natural and the supernatural is then. Illness, danger, and death are often seen as signs of spiritual unrest or punishment, requiring ceremonies that blur reality and the mystical. Their worldview is shaped by this constant tension, a delicate dance of survival amid forces both visible and invisible. Yet their fragile nomadic life faces a far greater threat. Outside contact, deforestation, and violence disrupt the sacred balance they have maintained for centuries. As this tribe fights to hold on to its secrets, the mysteries of their world only deepen. The Ndembu are more than survivors. They are guardians of an ancient way of life where every ritual, every belief, echoes with the harsh beauty of the Amazon itself. This fragile existence leads into a deeper look at the rituals that define their world. Rituals of blood, spirit, and survival that outsiders rarely glimpse, but which are vital to understanding who the Ndembu truly are. For the Ndembu, hunting is not simply a matter of food. It is a sacred dance with life and death, a ritual that binds hunter, prey, and forest in a web of spiritual power. Every hunt begins long before the bow is drawn. rooted in brutal ceremonies designed to prepare the hunter's body and soul. Pain becomes a bridge, a way to reach beyond the physical world and enter the domain of the spirits that govern the jungle. Before setting out, hunters undergo rites of passage that are both harsh and mysterious. Their skin is pierced with thorns or sharpened bones, small wounds bleeding freely as they chant prayers to the forest. This bloodletting is no accident. It is believed to awaken ancient forces, linking the hunter's life force with the animals they seek. The pain serves as a test of endurance, a way to prove worthiness to the spirits that watch silently from the shadows. To fail is not only personal defeat, but a dangerous disrespect to the balance of the forest. The sharing of blood among hunters strengthens their bond, a sacred pact forged in crimson. This ritual is thought to create a spiritual thread connecting each man to the other and to the prey, ensuring that the hunt is a communion, not just a chase. The forest is alive with eyes unseen, and only through these rites can hunters navigate its dangers, both physical and supernatural. The spirits demand respect, and those who ignore the rituals risk illness, misfortune, or even death. The hunt itself is a careful balance of stealth, patience, and respect. The Nukuk believe the animal's spirit must be honored. Killing is never taken lightly. Every arrow released carries the weight of tradition and spiritual consequence. The line between life and death feels razor thin, as the hunter becomes both predator and supplicant, caught in an eternal cycle where survival depends on understanding the forest's sacred laws. These deadly hunting rituals reveal a world where blood is more than sacrifice. It is connection, power, and survival. The Nukak's ancient ceremonies remind that in the depths of the Amazon, every breath and every wound echoes with meaning far beyond the physical. Their next chapter will uncover the fierce punishments that enforce the tribe's delicate social balance, where pain serves both justice and spiritual cleansing. In the unforgiving depths of the Amazon, the Nukuk tribe maintains order through rituals that may appear brutal to outsiders but carry deep meaning within their world. When someone breaks the tribe's sacred laws, punishment is not simply about pain or revenge. It is a form of spiritual cleansing, a harsh process meant to restore balance between the individual, the community, and the forest itself. Justice here is raw, public, and undeniable. Offenders face ritualistic torture that is carefully prescribed and symbolically charged. The punishments often involve piercing or cutting, inflicting wounds meant to both hurt and heal. These physical trials serve as a painful reminder of the consequences of breaking tribal rules. But more than punishment, they act as a purification, washing away the offender's misdeeds and warning others of the price of disorder. In the eyes of the Nukuk, social harmony depends on these intense ceremonies the community gathers to witness. These rituals, emphasizing their importance as a collective experience, public suffering becomes a lesson etched into memory, a demonstration of the tribe's strength and the seriousness of their customs. The offender's pain is not endured in silence. It is a charged moment where spiritual forces are called upon to cleanse the transgression. The ritual often includes chants and offerings, connecting physical punishment to unseen powers that enforce tribal law. These extreme measures are not cruelty for cruelty's sake. They are woven into the tribe's survival strategy in a world where survival is fragile and the jungle's dangers relentless. Strict social order is essential. Without these punishments, internal conflict could tear the Nukuk apart. The rituals remind everyone that community and respect for the natural order are the only paths to safety and longevity. Such harsh justice may shock modern eyes, but for the Nukuk, it is a vital force that binds them tightly together in a hostile world. These punishments embody a belief that pain can heal. That balance must be restored at any cost. This fragile society depends on these rituals to endure, just as much as it depends on the jungle's mercy. Within the heart of the Nenet Tribe, shamans command a power both feared and revered, standing as the vital link between the physical world and the unseen spirits that govern life and death. Their authority is not born from politics or strength, but from their ability to summon and channel spirits that possess bodies and minds, bending reality itself in ways that both terrify and awe the tribe. Shamanic rituals are intense, often involving the use of powerful hallucinogenic plants found only in the depths of the Amazon. These plants unlock visions that blur the boundary between the natural and the supernatural, transporting the shaman into realms where spirits speak in riddles and warnings. The altered states of consciousness are dangerous. Minds can fracture, and the line between possession and madness is perilously thin. Yet, the shaman's role demands this risk, for through these journeys they gain knowledge, healing powers, and control over the tribe's fate. During possession ceremonies, the shaman's body becomes a vessel for spirits both protective and vengeful. Their voice changes, eyes roll back, and movements grow erratic as otherworldly forces take control. The tribe watches in silence, a mixture of fear and respect gripping every heart. This is a moment where the living and the dead meet, where decisions about health, future hunts, or the tribe's survival are made under the guidance of these powerful entities. The shaman's dark power is not just mystical, it is deeply practical. Illness, injury, and misfortune are often seen as signs of spiritual imbalance or attack. Only the shaman can diagnose these invisible wounds and perform the cleansing rituals necessary to restore harmony. Their power extends into the social fabric of the tribe. They can bless marriages, curse enemies, and even determine justice. In a world governed by spirits, their word carries the weight of law. Yet this power breeds fear. Shamans walk a precarious path, respected but isolated, always at risk of losing themselves to the spirits they summon. Their rituals reveal a world where the sacred and the terrifying exist side by side, where survival depends on the delicate balance of unseen forces. This bond between shaman and spirit is a dark mirror to the tribe's struggle, a reminder that life in the jungle is shaped not just by nature, but by powers beyond human understanding. From the shaman's dark command flows the tribe's connection to the spiritual world, a connection that demands respect and fear. But the tribe's traditions go deeper still, reaching into their beliefs about death itself, a realm where the living and the dead blur in unsettling ways. The next chapter will unravel the chilling Nenet burial customs, revealing a haunting view of the afterlife. For the Nenet, death is not a peaceful passage, but a fearful transformation that blurs the line between the living and the dead. The moment a tribe member dies, they are believed to enter a restless state, their spirit neither gone nor at peace. This belief shapes burial customs that are as unsettling as they are profound, revealing a culture haunted by the presence of those who have crossed over but refuse to leave. Instead of burial in the earth, many Nenet bodies are left exposed in the forest, placed carefully on raised platforms or within natural clearings. This practice serves a dual purpose. It returns the body to nature, but it also keeps the spirit at a distance. The tribe believes that the dead's restless souls linger close, and improper treatment can lead to malevolent hauntings. Leaving bodies exposed is thought to prevent these spirits from returning to harm the living. In some cases, the dead are bound or marked with symbolic cuts and painted with natural dyes. These markings are meant to confuse and repel spirits, acting as a barrier between the living world and the dangerous forces that lie beyond death. The tribe warns that without these precautions, the restless dead might possess family members, spread illness, or bring misfortune. Such beliefs feed a constant, low-burning fear that death can spill chaos into daily life. The Nukek view their burial rites as a vital protection, not only for the deceased but for the entire community. These rituals are filled with chants and offerings, seeking to appease the spirits and guide them away from the living. Yet the terror remains. Death is never truly final, and the forest hides countless souls trapped in limbo. The tribe's relationship with death is one of both respect and dread, a reminder that the line between this world and the next is thin and fragile. This haunting connection to the dead shapes much of the Nukak's worldview, where every breath and shadow carries the weight of unseen forces. Their burial customs reveal a tribe living with ancient warnings, where survival depends as much on honoring the restless dead as it does on the living jungle. But even as they confront death's dark grip, the Nukek face a future threatened by change and extinction. The Nukek tribe stands at a crossroads, their ancient world unraveling beneath the weight of relentless modern forces. Vast swaths of the Amazon rainforest, their sacred home and source of life, are disappearing under the blade of deforestation. Trees that once whispered ancestral secrets fall silent, replaced by the noise of chainsaws and the scent of smoke. This destruction threatens more than the forest. It threatens the very soul of the Nukek people. Forced contact with outsiders brings confusion and danger. Once hidden in the depths of the jungle, the tribe now faces intrusion by settlers, miners, and soldiers. These encounters often bring violence, disease, and displacement. The delicate balance maintained for generations fractures under the pressure of a world that refuses to leave the Nukek in peace. Their nomadic way of life, so tied to the rhythms of the forest, is pushed to the brink of extinction. Amid this struggle, the tribe clings to its ancient rituals, rites of blood, spirit, and justice that once ensured survival in the jungles and forgiving deaths. These customs, harsh and disturbing to outsiders, become acts of resistance. Each ceremony is a declaration of identity, a refusal to vanish silently, the pain endured in ritual haunts, the punishments that enforce order, and the shamanic battles with unseen forces all hold the tribe together when everything else threatens to fall apart. But this fight is exhausting. Younger generations face pressure to abandon tradition, torn between the pull of the outside world and the demands of their heritage. The forest that once protected the Nukak grows smaller every year, and with it, the safety of their customs, the terrifying rituals that once kept spirits at bay, and justice in balance now seem like fragile lifelines in a world spiraling toward loss. The Nukak's story is a tragic echo of many indigenous peoples, a culture caught between survival and disappearance. Their disturbing traditions reveal a deep bond to a land under siege, a desperate struggle to hold on to identity, spirit, and history, as their world changes irreversibly. The question remains, can the Nukak endure, or will their ancient ways vanish into the shadows of a fading jungle? This struggle against time and change underscores the profound urgency of understanding and protecting one of the Amazon's last nomadic tribes. A world where every ritual, every belief, carries the weight of survival itself. Picts unveiled, dark rituals and deadly traditions of an ancient warrior tribe. Picts were more than warriors. They were people cloaked in shadows, their very existence woven into the fabric of mystery. Emerging from the rugged landscapes of northern Britain, they carved their fierce identity through relentless battles, defying the might of the Roman Empire with a ferocity few dared to challenge. Their name itself, thought to mean painted ones, evokes images of men transformed into living specters. Their bodies adorned with blue water pigment so vivid it blurred the line between man and myth. Say painted warriors did not simply fight, they became legends, terrifying their foes with faces and limbs streaked in eerie designs. This body art was not mere decoration, but a sacred ritual, a visual declaration of strength, unity, and fearlessness. Behind the war cries and painted skin lay a society deeply connected to the unseen world, where symbols carved into stone spoke of ancient magic and tribal secrets. These cryptic carvings remain an enigma, hinting at beliefs and stories that time has nearly swallowed. The Picts lived in a world where violence was not just a means of survival but a sacred duty. Their brutal warfare was intertwined with spiritual rites, transforming each battle into a clash of forces beyond the physical. Theirs was a culture that revered the power of the ancestors, drawing strength from the past and weaving it into every strike of the sword. Yet, this fierce exterior masked a people whose rituals and beliefs remain hidden beneath layers of legend and silence. Their society was a labyrinth of mystery warriors who painted themselves for battle, priests who spoke in riddles carved in stone, and a culture that embraced both the living and the dead with equal reverence. This blend of brutality and mysticism shaped the Picts into a tribe unlike any other. Their story a haunting echo through the centuries, from the painted bodies to the cryptic symbols. Every detail reveals a people bound by fear, faith, and an unyielding will to survive. Before the clash of steel and shield, the Picts transformed themselves into living legends with a ritual as old as the tribe itself. Their bodies, bare and scarred from past battles, became canvases for swirling patterns of blue woad paint. This striking asha was not simply meant to intimidate enemy, though it did so with terrifying effect. It was a sacred symbol, a bridge between the physical world and the realm of spirits. Each brushstroke carried weight, weaving a silent spell of protection and power. The blue woad itself held deep meaning. Drawn from a plant known to stain skin for days, its color was the hue of the sky just before dusk, the same shade believed to represent death and rebirth. By painting themselves, the warriors embraced a transformation that went beyond flesh. They invoked the spirits of ancestors long gone, calling on their strength to flow through their veins. This connection turned each battle into more than a fight for survival. It became a deadly spiritual pact, a covenant sealed with blood and paint. As the warriors stood in formation, their faces and bodies alive with vivid blue symbols. The air thickened with a fierce energy. This was a ritual of fear and respect, designed to unnerve foes and embolden the fighters themselves. The paint seemed to pulse under the flicker of firelight, almost as if the warriors carried the power of the gods on their skin. Their painted bodies told stories of past glories, tribal loyalties, and unyielding courage. The Picts believed that without this sacred war paint, their souls would be vulnerable, and their bodies would not withstand the horrors of battle. The act of painting was both a physical and spiritual armor, creating an invisible shield stronger than any metal. It bonded the warriors not only to their living comrades, but also to the unseen world that watched and judged every strike and fall. This ritual of war preparation was a delicate balance of art and magic, of fierce decoration. That these warriors were not merely flesh and bone, but embodiments of ancient, untouchable power. It was a promise that in death or victory, they would be reborn through the strength of their tribe and the spirits they honored. For the Picts, death was not an end, but a passage into a restless, powerful realm where the living and dead coexisted in a fragile balance. Their fierce devotion to ancestral worship went beyond memory or respect. It was a living connection that shaped every part of their world. The tombs of chiefs and warriors were not silent resting places, but sacred spaces where the spirits of the dead were believed to watch over the living, demanding loyalty and offerings to maintain the tribe's strength. These tombs were often more than simple graves. Within the earth lay not only the bones of great leaders, but also human sacrifices, slaves, servants, or captives buried alive or slain to serve their masters in the afterlife. Such sacrifices were seen as necessary, a terrifying testament to the belief that power and protection extended beyond death. The living feared angering these spirits, for the Picts believed the boundary between worlds was dangerously thin, and restless ancestors could unleash curses or misfortune. The act of sacrifice was brutal but sacred. It was an offering of life to secure favor, a dark ritual that tied the fate of the tribe to the whims of those who had passed. These rituals were not mere superstition, but essential acts to ensure survival, as the Picts saw their ancestors as active participants in the tribe's fortunes, warriors still fighting, judges still ruling from beyond the grave. Symbols carved in stone near these tombs hinted at the Picts' complex spiritual beliefs abstract. Designs that may have recorded sacred laws or protective spells. These carvings served as warnings and prayers, a visual language meant to keep the dead appeased and the living safe. The ancestors' presence was felt in daily life, shaping decisions, justice, and even warfare. This closeness to death forged a culture that embraced the macabre, where the line between life and afterlife was blurred, and loyalty extended beyond. The grave. It was a world where fear and reverence walked hand in hand, binding the tribe together through dark, ancient rites taught justice in Pictish society was swift and merciless. A system forged in the fires of survival and steeped in ancient tradition. Punishments were not just about retribution, they were a brutal language of control, designed to strike fear into the hearts of those who might threaten the fragile balance of the tribe. Every penalty carried the weight of both physical agony and spiritual doom. Torture was a common tool of enforcement, often cruel beyond measure. Offenders could be maimed, limbs broken, tongues cut, or faces scarred, and punishments meant to mark the body as well as the soul. These wounds were permanent reminders, worn openly to shame the guilty and warn others. Public humiliation accompanied the pain, with punishments carried out in front of the tribe to reinforce the cost of disobedience and betrayal. But the harshest sentence was exile, a punishment worse than death in Pictish belief. To be cast out was to be severed from the tribe's protective spirits. Condemned to wander without the safety of ancestral guardians, exile meant losing identity, community, and the chance to join the ancestors in the afterlife. It was a spiritual death, the fate so feared that it kept many in line where physical punishment alone might fail. This duality of justice pain for the body and death for the spirit reflected the Picts' deep understanding of loyalty and order. Fear was a tool, as sharp as any sword, wielded to preserve tradition and authority. The tribe's survival depended on strict obedience, with punishments reinforcing the invisible chains that bound each member to the whole through torture and exile. The Picts maintained a society where respect and fear were intertwined. This harsh code shaped not only law, but also the very identity of the tribe, embedding discipline in the bones of its people, scattered across the rugged landscapes of northern Britain. Massive stone monuments stand as silent sentinels to a vanished world, covered in swirling, abstract symbols and enigmatic carvings. The Pictish stones are riddles etched in rock, messages meant to be seen but not easily understood. These cryptic designs guard secrets of a culture obsessed with mystery, hiding their deepest beliefs and laws behind shapes that resist interpretation even today. The stones likely served many purposes: markers of sacred sites, records of tribal laws, or warnings to those who dared trespass. Some carvings resemble animal serpents, bulls, and mythical beasts, while others are abstract shapes, interlocking spirals, or strange objects that defy explanation. Each symbol held meaning. For the Picts, a key to understanding their world and their place within it. But to outsiders, these stones remain a puzzle, a locked door to a culture that valued secrecy above all else. This obsession with hidden knowledge reflects the Picts' need to protect their sacred rituals and beliefs from enemies and outsiders. In a time when survival depended on power and mystery, the stones acted as a shield, concealing spiritual truths beneath layers of symbolism. Their placement near burial sites and ancient gathering places suggests they were part of the tribe's spiritual defense, a way to confuse or curse those who sought to uncover forbidden knowledge. The carvings also hint at a worldview where the seen and unseen were intertwined, where every symbol held power, and every image was a link between the living and the dead. This secret language shaped not only their art, but also their identity. A silent code passed down through generations, to preserve the tribe's dark legacy. As the sun sets on their carved stones, the Picts themselves seem to vanish deeper into legend. Their rituals, laws, and symbols remain locked in stone, whispers from a past where power was hidden behind layers of mystery. Yet, the tribe's story does not end in stone alone. Their disappearance from history marks the final chapter of a people whose fierce spirit still echoes across the lands they once ruled. By the early Middle Ages, the Picts had all but disappeared from the pages of history. Once fierce and proud, their identity dissolved, whether through conquest, assimilation, or the relentless march of time remains uncertain. Some believe they were absorbed into neighboring tribes, their bloodlines and customs merging with the Scots and Gaels. Others whisper of brutal battles and diseases that wiped out entire communities, leaving behind only fragments of a vanished people. This disappearance is more than a simple fading. It is a haunting mystery that still puzzles historians and archaeologists. The Picts left no written records of their own, only stones etched with cryptic symbols and tales told by those who feared or fought them. Their strange rituals, fierce warfare, and brutal laws survive as ghostly echoes, fragments of a culture shrouded in secrecy and blood. Yet, the Pictish spirit lingers in Scotland's hills and folklore, in legends of painted warriors and shadowy guardians of the land. These stories keep alive the memory of a people who once stood unyielding against the tides of history. Their vanished presence is a chilling reminder of how entire cultures can be swallowed by time, leaving behind mysteries as deep and dark as the blue wall paint that once covered their skin. As their shadow fades into legend, the true nature of the Picts remains locked away, waiting for those bold enough to uncover the secrets hidden beneath the stones and paint. Pre-Celtic Druids, secrets of an ancient tribe's darkest rituals in the deep shadows of ancient Europe, long before the rise of kingdoms and empires. The Pre-Celtic Druids held a power both revered and feared, cloaked in secrecy. They were the keepers of forbidden knowledge, masters of life, death, and the unseen forces that bound the world. Their influence spread through vast forests and rolling hills, where sacred groves became places of mystery. Whispered chants and secret ceremonies, too many. They were wise scholars, guides to the spiritual realm, but beneath that calm surface lurk darker truths, rituals so extreme they have puzzled historians for centuries. These druids did not simply interpret the world, they shaped it. Their strict codes governed every aspect of life, weaving social order with spiritual laws that demanded obedience. Bound by oaths of silence, their rites were hidden from outsiders, known only to the initiates who dared step into their shadowed world. The balance between reverence and terror defined their existence. Some viewed them as healers, wielding herbs and ancient wisdom to mend the body and soul. Others whispered of sacrifices, punishments, and acts so brutal they seemed to tear at the fabric of humanity itself. At the heart of Druidic power was the belief that the natural and supernatural were intertwined. Trees were not mere plants, but living spirits. Stones were more than rock, they were gateways to other realms. The Druids' command over these forces granted them authority over life's most sacred passage. Death. They held the power to decide who lived, who died, and how the soul traveled beyond. Such power was not given lightly, and it came with terrifying responsibility. The pre-Celtic Druids stood as a force both protective and destructive. Their knowledge of the stars, the earth, and the human mind allowed them to manipulate fate itself. Yet this knowledge was guarded fiercely, charted in symbolism and coded language. Secrets passed down through generations often involved rituals that tested the limits of endurance, belief, and loyalty. To understand the Druids was to confront a world where the line between wisdom and holy blood, many of their practices remained locked in the past, known only through scattered accounts and ancient relics. What remains clear is the intense power. These Druids commanded power that shaped ancient European spirituality and left a mark on history as enigmatic as it is unsettling. Their legacy is a haunting reminder of how close the human mind can walk to darkness in the pursuit of sacred truth. From the whispered groves of these guardians of forbidden knowledge comes a story of sacrifice earned. Shadow a glimpse into rituals, so extreme they challenge the limits of belief. This is where the ancient world reveals its darkest secrets, and where the line between the sacred and the terrifying fades away. Next, the chilling sacrifices that bound the Druids to their gods reveal how far they were willing to go to keep their hold on power. In the shadowed depths of ancient forests, towering wooden structures rose like dark sentinels, grim monuments to the most feared and sacred rituals of the pre-Celtic Druids. These massive constructions, built from mighty oaks, served a chilling purpose: to carry human lives into the grasp of the old gods through fire and smoke. The Druids believed that only through such brutal offerings could they maintain the fragile balance between earth and sky, life and death. Human sacrifice was no mere act of cruelty, it was a solemn duty. Victims, often chosen from captured enemies or the tribe zone, were bound within these towering frameworks. Known to some as wicker men, as flames consumed the living body, smoke rose, believed to carry the soul across the veil, bridging the worlds of mortals and deities. The agony was both physical and spiritual, a passage that satisfied the gods' hunger and secured blessings in return. These sacrifices were more than ritual, they were a grim form of communication with the divine. Fertility of the land, victory in war, and protection from disaster were all tied to these fiery offerings. The blood spilled was thought to fuel the cycles of nature, renewing the earth's power and ensuring the tribe's survival. To refuse such sacrifice was unthinkable, risking wrath and ruin. Witnesses to these ceremonies spoke of a haunting silence pierced only by crackling flames and desperate cries. The air thickened with smoke and fear, as onlookers felt the weight of something both holy and horrifying. The Druids, dressed in robes and masks, chanted prayers that echoed through the trees, guiding the victims soulward. This terrifying spectacle revealed the depths of faith woven into the tribe's darkest customs. Though brutal, these sacrifices were accepted as necessary, a terrifying testament to the lengths the Druids would go to hold favor with their gods. They demanded obedience through fear, binding the community with rituals that hovered between reverence and horror. The towering fires burned not only wood and flesh, but the very spirit of the tribe's ancient beliefs. For the pre-Celtic Druids, death did not mark the end of justice, only its most haunting beginning. The laws that governed life extended their reach beyond the grave, casting long shadows over how the dead were treated. Those who committed grave offenses faced punishments that denied them peace even in death. A chilling practice designed to enforce order through terror. Certain crimes, such as betrayal, theft, or breaking sacred oaths, carried a curse that followed the offender beyond their final breath. Their bodies were condemned to a fate worse than death itself. Denied burial, left exposed to the elements, or discarded in places of shame. To be refused a proper resting place was to be trapped in a liminal state, neither fully alive nor truly dead, doomed to rot and be forgotten. This refusal of burial was a powerful form of social exile, in a culture where ancestral spirits were believed to influence the living. A disturbed or restless soul was thought to bring misfortune to the tribe. The fear of spiritual contamination kept communities vigilant, compelling obedience through dread of both earthly and otherworldly punishment. Exposed bodies became warnings carved into the landscape, grim reminders of the consequences of defiance. Carrion birds feasted on flesh once part of the tribe's living web, their cries echoing like curses. The slow decay was a spectacle of dishonor, stripping the individual of dignity and erasing their place in the sacred cycle of life and death. Such practices reveal a tribe ruled not just by law, but by fear of divine wrath and communal rejection that extended beyond mortal existence. Justice was harsh and absolute, designed to bind every member to the tribe's rigid moral code. The silence of the dead was a language all understood, a silent echo that reinforced the power of the Druids and the inescapability of their judgment. These afterlife punishments reveal the profound grip of Druidic belief, a worldview where the boundary between life and death was permeable, and where punishment could stretch beyond the grave. From this dark vision of justice comes a deeper look at the rituals that tested the mind and spirit, pushing initiates toward forbidden knowledge and mental entrance. Hidden deep within the ancient forests, the sacred groves of the Pre-Celtic, Druids were more than places of worship. They were arenas of transformation, where mind and body were tested beyond ordinary limits, behind towering oaks and veils of mist. The Druids guarded forbidden knowledge with fierce determination, passing it only to those who survived grueling rites. These initiations were as much about entrance as enlightenment, blending physical strain with mental torment to unlock the secrets of the unseen world. Initiates entered the groves stripped of comfort and certainty, subjected to sensory deprivation that numbed the senses and stretched the mind to its breaking point. Darkness, silence, and isolation wrapped round them like a suffocating shroud. Time lost meaning, the veil between waking and dreaming blurred. Chanting voices echoed from the shadows. Ancient hymns meant to disorient and open new doors. Within the psyche. These rites were far from gentle. The Druids believed that true wisdom required crossing thresholds of pain and fear, fasting, exposure to the elements, and grueling physical trials tested the limits of human resilience. Some faced long hours alone in the wilderness, confronting their deepest fears and the weight of silence. The purpose was not only to gain knowledge, but to strip away the self, dissolving ego to reveal the spiritual core. The combination of harsh physical trials and profound mental strain created an aura of awe and terror around the Druids. They were seen as spiritual mediators, bridges between mortal and divine, wielding insights inaccessible to ordinary people. The trials imbued initiates with visions sometimes terrifying, sometimes transcendent, that blurred reality and myth. These experiences reinforced the Druids' hold on power, as they alone controlled the path to such forbidden wisdom, beyond the physical suffering. These rituals forged a profound psychological bond within the tribe. The pain endured became a badge of honor and a source of unquestioned authority. The Druids' role as keepers of ancient secrets rested not only on their knowledge, but on their proven endurance of these extreme rites. They stood apart, both feared and respected, commanding loyalty through the mystery of their spiritual power. These mental trials reveal the intense depths of Druidic belief, where the pursuit of sacred knowledge demanded sacrifice and transformation. From the silence of these groves, where mind and body were pushed to extremes, the tribe's darkest punishments emerged, punishments that struck not just the flesh, but the very soul itself. In the world of the Pre-Celtic Druids, belonging was everything, woven tightly into the fabric of identity and survival. To be cast out was to face a fate worse than death, a punishment that reached far beyond physical pain. Outcasts were not simply punished. They were erased from the tribe's memory and denied the very existence that gave life meaning. Exile was the ultimate sentence. Banished from the sacred lands and protective community, The outcast was left to wander alone, vulnerable to the wild and unknown, stripped of shelter, kin, and ritual. They existed in a void where survival became a desperate struggle. Without the tribe's recognition, their place in the spiritual cycle was shattered, severing ties to ancestors and gods alike. Ritual shaming intensified this erasure. Public ceremonies exposed the offender's transgressions in brutal clarity, stripping away dignity through humiliation and symbolic acts. Faces were marked with ash or charcoal, garments torn or defaced, visible signs that branded them forever. As outcasts, these rituals served not just as punishment, but as warnings binding the community together through shared fear and obedience. The Druids' harsh social codes enforced strict conformity, where breaking sacred laws invited social death. Identity was inseparable from communal acceptance, and without it, an individual was lost, forgotten in both the living world and the afterlife. The threat of obliteration was a powerful tool to maintain order and control. This rigid system reveals a tribe governed by more than just law. It was a society where psychological punishment was as severe as any physical pain. The mark of the outcast was a curse that haunted both the individual and the community, a reminder of how fragile belonging truly was. From the depths of this social exile emerges a darker vision of justice, one that extends beyond the grave and into the realm of spirits. The next chapter delves into the afterlife punishments that awaited those who defied the sacred order, where death was only the beginning of torment. The shadows of the pre-Celtic Druids stretch far beyond their time, weaving into the fabric of modern myths and spiritual traditions. Tales of eerie sacrifices, haunting punishments, and secret rites have echoed through centuries, capturing imaginations with their blend of mystery and terror. These stories blur the line between history and legend, revealing a legacy that refuses to fade. Folklore across Europe carries fragments of druidic rituals, images of towering wicker men, ghostly groves, and relentless judges of the dead. These vivid tales continue to inspire fear and fascination, feeding into the collective imagination of what ancient magic and power might have been. The chilling idea of human sacrifice as a sacred act and the belief in posthumous judgment remain haunting motifs in stories and popular culture beyond folklore. Modern spiritual movements draw on druidic symbols and practices, seeking connection to nature's power and ancient wisdom. Yet beneath this revival lies a fascination with the tribe's darker side, the willingness to embrace pain, punishment, and sacrifice as part of a sacred path. This complex legacy challenges the romantic view of druids as peaceful mystics, revealing instead a people shaped by fear, control, and extreme devotion. The enduring power of these disturbing beliefs lies in their ability to tap into universal fears of death, judgment, and the unknown. They remind us that beneath the surface of human spirituality often lie shadows, rituals, and punishments born of desperation and deep-seated need for order. The pre-Celtic Druids' world was one where darkness and light intertwined, and their echoes continue to shape how modern society imagines the sacred and the terrifying. From these echoes rises a final question. How much of what is feared today is born from these ancient rites? The legacy of the Druids remains a haunting presence, urging a deeper understanding of humanity's oldest fears and rituals. Sand tribe secrets, shocking rituals, and harsh traditions of Africa's oldest people. Sand tribe stands as one of humanity's oldest living cultures, their roots stretching back tens of thousands of years in the vast and unforgiving Kalahari Desert. With unmatched tracking skills, they navigate an environment that offers little mercy, each step guided by an intimate knowledge of the land, the animals, and the shifting winds. To the outside world, they may seem like peaceful hunters, attuned to nature's rhythms, but beneath this surface lies a society bound by intense customs that are as strict as they are mysterious. Survival for the San is not only a physical challenge, but a test of the spirit and the mind. Their culture holds rituals that are as powerful as they are unsettling, shaping every moment of daily life. Within the tribe, these secret ceremonies dictate relationships, punish transgressions, and maintain the fragile balance between humans and the forces they believe govern existence. Some rituals involve endurance that pushes the limits of pain, while others enforce social order with punishments that shock in their severity. These practices reveal a worldview where the natural and the supernatural are inseparable. The San believe that the spirits of the land watch closely, ready to reward obedience or punish defiance. Such beliefs create a strict code. A code that demands respect not only for the environment but for the tribe's traditions. Often enforced through harsh means, this hidden side of the San challenges modern ideas of civilization and forces reflection on how ancient peoples preserved order and identity through extremes. Understanding the San means stepping beyond admiration for their survival skills and facing the raw intensity of their customs that many outsiders find hard to comprehend, yet that have ensured their people's endurance for millennia. This delicate balance between survival and tradition sets the stage for the tribe's most intense and disturbing ceremonies, where healing and suffering merge, and where the spirit's power is tested against the body's limits. In the heart of the Kalahari, beneath a blazing sun and a sky heavy with silence, the San tribe gathers in a circle, their bodies already weary, but their spirits charged with purpose. The healing dance begins not as a gentle ritual, but as a grueling test of endurance and willpower. Men and women press their feet into the dust, stamping rhythmically while their hands weave complex patterns in the air, each motion deliberate, charged with unseen energy. This is no ordinary dance. It is a passage into the spirit world, a desperate plea for life to return to the sick and weak. The ceremony is brutal. Dancers push their bodies to exhaustion, sweat pouring down faces streaked with dirt and paint. Their joints ache, muscles burn, yet they press on, driven by an ancient belief that the pain is a gateway. The greater the suffering, the deeper the trance, and the stronger the healing power that flows from the invisible spirits. Time becomes meaningless as the circle tightens, voices rising into haunting chants, echoing across the desert night. The energy is palpable, a mix of agony and hope. As the trance deepens, dancers collapse and writhe, caught between worlds. The San believe that through this agony, the end, or spiritual energy, is ignited and released. This force travels from the healer's body into the sick, cleansing illness and restoring balance. To outsiders, the sight can be disturbing, faces twisted in pain, bodies convulsing without rest. But for the tribe, this suffering is sacred. It is a powerful reminder that healing is not painless, but earned through sacrifice and connection to the earth's raw forces. The dance is also a communal act, binding the tribe together through shared hardship and faith. Each participant accepts the risk of injury or collapse because the tribe's survival depends on it. The spiritual world is close here, and its judgment swift. To falter is not just physical failure, but a threat to the whole community's well-being. The line between pain and salvation blurs, and in that liminal space, the San confront the brutal beauty of life itself, this fierce connection between body, spirit, and nature reveals a belief system far removed from modern medicine. It demands respect and reveals the tribe's profound relationship with the unseen forces that govern their world. In the unforgiving expanse of the Kalahari, where resources are scarce and survival demands cooperation, the San tribe enforces order with a justice system as severe as the desert sun. Disobedience or breaking the tribe's unspoken rules is met not with leniency, but with punishments that leave lasting marks both on the body and the spirit. These consequences may shock modern sensibilities, yet they serve a vital role in preserving fragile harmony among the people. Public shaming is one of the tribe's harshest tools. Those who disrupt community balance are exposed to the collective gaze, their faults announced and remembered. This social punishment isolates offenders. Cutting them off from the tribe's support affect nearly as punishing as physical pain. The San understand that in such an environment, belonging is survival, and the fear of exclusion keeps many in line. Physical penalties, however, are often the most brutal expressions of justice. Whippings, beatings, or forced entrance tests are meted out to offenders, designed not only to punish, but to teach a lesson etched in pain. These punishments are never arbitrary. They are carefully tied to the severity of the offense and intended to reinforce respect for. Tribal laws. The body becomes a canvas for discipline, and scars serve as reminders of the consequences of defiance. The intensity of these punishments reveals a worldview where individual actions ripple through the entire community. The San live by strict codes that protect not just individuals, but the tribe's delicate existence. Order is maintained through a balance of fear and respect, fear of harsh penalties, respect for tradition and survival. These harsh lessons are unforgettable, ensuring that the fragile social fabric does not unravel for young boys of the San tribe. Becoming a man is not simply a matter of age or words spoken, it is earned through brutal trials that test every ounce of strength and spirit. The rite of passage is a harsh crucible where endurance and courage are pushed to their limits, demanding sacrifices few outside the tribe could imagine. This transformation is both a physical and psychological journey, one that shapes identity and social standing for a lifetime. The ceremonies begin with painful rituals designed to prove resilience. Boys endure cuts, burns, or the piercing of skin with sharp thorns, marks that bind them forever to their community and its ancient traditions. Each wound is a symbol of bravery, an outward sign of the inner strength required to survive in the Kalahari's relentless environment. Pain is not avoided but embraced, for it is through suffering that respect is earned. Isolation is another cruel element. Young men are often separated from their families for days or weeks, left to face the desert's unforgiving landscape alone or with minimal support. This solitude strips away dependence, forcing self-reliance in the harshest conditions. The psychological strain weighs heavily. Fear, loneliness, and the constant threat of danger become constant companions. These moments shape mental toughness, preparing them for the unpredictable challenges of adulthood. The trials also include tests of hunting skill and knowledge of the land. Crucial for the tribe's survival, success means more than personal pride. It means the ability to provide and protect. Failure can mean shame or exclusion, threats nearly as terrifying as the physical dangers faced. These rites are deeply intertwined with the tribe's values, where courage is not just admired but required. Behind every painful ritual and isolated night lies the unspoken truth. Survival in the Kalahari depends on strength forged through hardship. The tribe's future rests on these young men who have endured the deadly tests of manhood. Yet, these rites also carry risks, broken bodies, and fragile minds, and reveal a culture that demands sacrifice. As the price of respect, the San tribe lives under the watchful eyes of unseen forces, where breaking a single taboo can unleash disaster far beyond human punishment. These taboos govern every part of life, how people interact with each other, with animals, and with the spirits that dwell in the desert's vast silence. Their invisible laws etch deep into the tribe's soul, shaping behavior through a powerful blend of fear and reverence. Some taboos restrict relationships, forbidding certain marriages or alliances that could disrupt the fragile social balance. Others govern how members must treat the land and its creatures, demanding respect for every living thing. To harm the environment carelessly is not just an offense against nature, it invites spiritual wrath, believed to bring illness or sudden death. The San see the natural world and the spirit world as one, each action rippling through both realms. The consequences of breaking these sacred rules are terrifying. Illness often follows taboo violations, sometimes striking down entire families. Death is not seen as random, but as punishment from spirits angered by disrespect. This belief creates a tense, watchful society where every gesture, every word, is measured against invisible laws. Fear of supernatural punishment keeps order where human laws might fail. These taboos are enforced not by written codes, but through oral tradition and communal memory, passed from elders who carry the weight of ancestral knowledge. The power of these beliefs lies in their mystery. No outsider fully understands the rituals that restore balance after a taboo is broken, nor the secrets whispered in sacred ceremonies. This mystery preserves control and demands obedience. The San's spiritual taboos reveal a world where survival depends on harmony not just with nature, but with the unseen forces that govern life and death. This balance is delicate, maintained through strict rules and deep fear. As modern pressures encroach on the Kalahari, the tribe's struggle to preserve these ancient beliefs grows fiercer, revealing the final challenge in their fight for cultural survival, a battle between tradition and change. The San tribe stands at a crossroads where ancient traditions collide with the relentless march of modern life. The vast Kalahari Desert, once their unchallenged home, now shrinks under the weight of encroaching development, government restrictions, and outside influences. Their ancient customs, once woven seamlessly into every breath of daily life, face extinction under pressures that demand conformity and change. Yet, despite these overwhelming forces, the San resist in secret gatherings beneath starlit skies. They continue their sacred healing dances, perform rites of passage, and honor taboos passed down through countless generations. These rituals, hidden from outsiders' eyes, are acts of defiance as much as preservation. Each whispered prayer, each carefully guarded ceremony, is a reminder that identity cannot be erased by fences or laws. The struggle to hold on to their way of life comes with heavy costs. Younger generations, torn between the promise of modern education and the pull of ancestral wisdom, often find themselves caught in the middle. Traditions that once united the tribe now risk becoming symbols of division. The harsh punishments, intense rituals, and strict taboos practices that once ensured survival are sometimes seen as barriers to progress or reasons for stigmatization. This clash between past and present reveals a tribe caught in the fragile space between survival and assimilation. The San's resilience is remarkable, but it is shadowed by the tragedy of cultural loss. Each sacrifice to preserve their ancient beliefs is a battle against time and change. A fight to keep alive a way of knowing the world that modern society struggles to understand. In this fight, the San remind the world of the fragile beauty in traditions that are often uncomfortable or difficult to witness. Their story is one of endurance, not just of body, but of spirit, and a powerful call to respect the deep roots that connect humanity to its ancient past. This enduring legacy is the final echo of a tribe that has survived against all odds, still holding onto the secrets of the Kalahari's harsh and forgiving heart. Sarmatian secrets, unveiling the brutal and bizarre rituals of an ancient warrior tribe. The endless stretch of the Eurasian steppes seemed to hold no mercy. Underneath the sweeping winds and open skies, the Sarmatians carved a world defined by strength, survival, and an unyielding warrior spirit. From the moment a child was born, life was shaped by the brutal demands of their environment, fierce battles for territory, loyalty to the clan, and an intense code of honor that broke no weakness. The Sarmatians were not just nomads, they were warriors of the open plains, mounted on swift horses that seemed to fly across the grasslands. Their reputation struck fear into neighboring tribes and empires alike. To be Sarmatian was to live by the sword and die by the sword, often young, often violently. This fierce existence was marked by rituals so extreme that even the Romans, who faced them in battle, whispered of their savage ways. Central to Sarmatian culture was the idea that honor was worth more than life itself. Death was not an end, but a gateway, a transition demanding its own solemn rites. Their society wove death and glory into a tapestry of customs that many would find disturbing. From the brutal training of young warriors, where pain was a rite of passage, to the haunting burial ceremonies that demanded offerings of horses and servants, every act was charged with meaning and fear. Social status was displayed not only in weapons or steeds, but also on the body. Scars and tattoos marked the brave, transforming flesh into a map of valor and suffering. These symbols were earned through rituals that tested limits and often crossed them. The Sarmatians believed the soul's strength depended on how much the body could endure. To show pain was weakness, to hide it was power. This tribal culture thrived on the edge of civilization, where survival meant embracing extremes. It was a world where loyalty could be enforced with ruthless punishments, and where women could ride into battle as fiercely as men. Behind their shining armor and elegant horse gear lay a society that embraced the harshest customs to protect its fragile order. These customs were not just about survival. They were language, a way to claim identity in a vast, empty land, where only the strongest could live and be remembered. The fierce world of the Sarmatians was brutal, yes, but it was also woven with belief, pride, and a dark beauty that still haunts history. The strange and brutal marks of their culture went far beyond their warriors' fierce faces. The story of their body markings, scars, and tattoos reveals a deeper layer of this ancient tribe's haunting identity. The skin of a Sarmatian warrior told a story no words could capture. Intricate tattoos and jagged scars covered their body marks, not of vanity, but of courage and survival. Each line and symbol burned into flesh carried weight far beyond mere decoration. These were badges of honor, worn proudly as proof of strength, spiritual protection, and rank within their fierce tribe. The process to earn these marks was a ritual of endurance and pain. Needles fashioned from bone or sharpened metal etched, dark ink deep beneath the skin. Scarring was created by slicing and cauterizing flesh in patterns that seared and burned for days. The screams and silence that followed were woven into the tribe's fabric, a brutal rite transforming boys into warriors. This bodily inscription was a sacred language understood by all in Sarmatian society, warriors. Tattoos could ward off evil spirits, believed to trap dark forces before they reached the soul. The scars, fresh or faded, were reminders of battles survived and limits conquered. To endure the pain without flinching was to prove loyalty and courage beyond question, beyond protection and honor. These marks told of social hierarchy. Not every man or woman earned the right to bear the full tapestry of tattoos or deep scars. They signaled who had faced death, who had led warriors into battle, and who carried the tribe's fate on their shoulders. The body became a living canvas, a sacred text of identity written in blood and pain. For the Sarmatians, the connection between physical suffering and spiritual strength was inseparable. Pain was not punishment, but a bridge to the divine, a ritual cleansing that purified the spirit and bound the individual closer to their ancestors. The marks became a shield both visible and invisible against the dangers of a harsh world. Through this deadly rite, the Sarmatians embraced their brutal existence, blending beauty with brutality, and identity with fate. Their bodies became living monuments to a culture where survival demanded not only strength of arms but endurance of spirit. The scars on their skin hinted at even darker customs, rituals of death and sacrifice that tested the boundaries of loyalty and belief. For the Sarmatians, death was not an end, but a passage to another realm where earthly power and loyalty must continue. Their burial practices were among the most extreme in the ancient world, reflecting a belief that the soul's journey into the afterlife required unimaginable offerings. To honor the dead, especially the elite warriors and chieftains entire, horses and even human servants were sacrificed and laid to rest alongside them. These funerary customs were vast in scale and chilling in detail. Graves were not mere pits but carefully constructed tombs, often covered by massive mounds of earth known as kurgans. Within these silent hills lay the dead, surrounded by a terrifying entourage of possessions, armor, weapons, jewelry, and living beings chosen to serve beyond the grave. Horses, prized companions in life, were killed and buried to carry their masters across the unknown realms. Their bodies rested forever, a symbol of eternal loyalty. But the sacrifice did not stop there. Servants, warriors, and sometimes even slaves were laid to rest with their lords, bound by duty that transcended mortal existence. These individuals were often ritually killed, their deaths a grim offering to accompany and protect the deceased in the afterlife. Such acts exposed a harsh worldview where life was expendable if it secured honor and power beyond death. The symbolism ran deeper than mere loyalty. The Sarmatians believed that the power and status of a leader in life must be maintained after death to ensure the tribe's survival. The grave became a miniature kingdom, a reflection of earthly glory preserved forever. This belief extended the warrior's influence beyond the physical world, binding spirits in a sacred, eternal bond. This ruthless burial rite also served to reinforce social hierarchy. Only those of the highest status were granted such grand ceremonies. The scale of the sacrifice displayed wealth and power, while warning rivals that death itself would not diminish a warrior's influence. It was a final act of dominance, and devotion. These chilling tombs, discovered centuries later, still speak of a culture obsessed with death, honor, and eternal loyalty. The Sarmatians' willingness to sacrifice life itself in pursuit of power after death reveals the haunting depths of their beliefs. From these dark practices rose another grim tradition: harsh punishments designed to protect that fragile order, where betrayal was met with brutal justice and the threat of exile from both life and the afterlife. In a world ruled by strength and survival, the Sarmatians enforced their fierce code with relentless cruelty. Their society demanded absolute loyalty, and the price for betrayal or cowardice was severe beyond imagination. Punishments were not hidden away. They were brutal, public, and meant to strike terror deep into the hearts of all who witnessed them. Public executions were common, serving as grim warnings to those who dared to break the warrior's code. Traitors faced death by methods designed to prolong agony, sometimes by slow strangulation or impalement. Such punishments were meant to shatter any thoughts of disloyalty and remind the tribe that honor was non-negotiable. Cowardice, considered the worst sin, invited mutilation, limbs hacked off or tongues cut out to mark the offender forever as unworthy. These terrifying consequences extended beyond individuals. Families of traitors could suffer disgrace or exile, their names wiped from tribal memory. The threat of losing not just life but social standing and afterlife respect reinforced the brutal social order. Fear was a weapon as sharp as any sword, wielded to keep the tribe united and ruthless. The enforcement of this code was a collective effort. Elders and warriors alike acted as judges, executioners, and enforcers of discipline. Loyalty was constantly tested in harsh rituals and trials of bravery. Failure was not forgiven, but punished swiftly to maintain the fragile balance of power. This violent justice reflected the tribe's belief that survival depended on unbreakable bonds forged through fear and respect. The Sarmatians saw weakness as a contagion that could destroy their world, and their ruthless punishments were a shield against it. Pain and fear became tools of control, shaping behavior and ensuring that every warrior understood the stakes behind the bloodshed layer. grim logic, the tribe could only endure if every member lived and died by the same unforgiving code. In this harsh reality, loyalty was life itself, and betrayal meant exile not just from the tribe but from the soul's journey beyond death. Yet, even this fierce code was challenged by the unexpected power Sarmatian women warriors who defied convention and reshaped the rules of battle and loyalty. In the harsh world of the Sarmatians, women did not remain hidden behind walls or confined to household tasks. Instead, many stepped into the dust and blood of the battlefield, becoming fierce warriors whose skills and courage rivaled those of their male counterparts. This radical departure from typical ancient gender role shot may bring peoples and left a lasting mark on history. Sarmatian female warriors were both respected and feared. Their presence on the battlefield blurred the lines between protector and executioner. They fought alongside men, wielding weapons with deadly precision and showing no hesitation in the face of violence. This was not mere participation. It was a deep commitment to the tribe's survival and honor. Their role extended beyond battle. Women took part in rituals that tested their strength and loyalty, enduring trials that required immense pain and courage. These ceremonies often involved body markings, scarification, and displays of endurance, tying women into the same fierce code that governed the male warriors. The boundary between spiritual and physical strength was thin, and women crossed it with fearlessness. Yet, this power came with complexity. The presence of female warriors challenged traditional social structures, causing unease even within their own tribe. Their ability to wield both nurturing and violent power made them unpredictable figures, both guardians of life and agents of death. Stories of women leading charges or executing harsh justice circulated among the Sarmatians, adding to their mystique and fearsome reputation. Their warrior status also influenced burial customs. Female warriors received honors similar to men, including elaborate graves with weapons and horses, reflecting their esteemed place in society. Such respect was rare in the ancient world and revealed a unique cultural acceptance of women's strength and sacrifice. The controversial role of these women echoes through history as a testament to a society where survival demanded breaking norms and embracing extremes. They embodied the tribe's fierce spirit, standing as living proof that in the Sarmatian world, power knew no gender. But even their strength was bound by the tribe's rigid laws that punished betrayal without mercy, testing loyalty in ways few could imagine. Every moment in Sarmatian life was touched by unseen forces, ancient fears that shaped their every move. Superstitions were woven into the fabric of their existence, guiding decisions from the smallest tasks to the gravest. Battles, the natural world spoke in signs, omens in the flight of birds, strange patterns in the stars, or sudden changes in the wind, each read as a message from the spirit realm. Ignoring these warnings was unthinkable, for doing so invited disaster. Ritual objects held tremendous power, amulets carved from bone, talismans made of horsehair, and weapons inscribed with symbols were believed to protect warriors from evil spirits and curses. These items were treated as sacred shields, necessary for survival in a world where danger lurked beyond sight. The Sarmatians feared the invisible shape, not just their rituals, but their identity as a tribe bound by both physical and spiritual battles. Superstition justified extreme behavior. When a warrior saw a bad omen before going into battle, it could lead to desperate acts, extra sacrifices, brutal purifications, or fierce displays of encouragement to appease restless spirits. Even everyday disputes could escalate if one party believed they were cursed or dishonored in the eyes of the gods. These shared fears forged unity, but also bred suspicion, creating a fragile balance between trust and terror. This spiritual vigilance extended to death and the afterlife. The tribe believed restless souls could haunt the living, bringing misfortune unless proper rites were performed. Rituals to cleanse and protect the home or camp were frequent, involving blood offerings or symbolic destruction of objects to trap or repel harmful spirits. These customs underscored a constant awareness that the world was filled with hidden threats, as real as any enemy on horseback. The weight of these beliefs was immense. Every action was measured against the unseen world, forcing individuals to live in a state of sacred fear, respectful, yet wary of the dark forces that shape fate. This deep-rooted spirituality, blending and terror, bound the tribe tightly together, reinforcing the brutal customs that ensured their survival. From these haunted beliefs sprang rituals of pain and sacrifice, rituals that shaped identity and tested the limits of loyalty and courage in ways both terrifying and profound.